Welcome to the Wine Zone. I'm Conrad EJBICH, and this is Pro and Con. My guest today is Derek Saunders, proprietor of Calamus Estate Winery, which is located in the Vinemount Ridge appellation on the beautiful Niagara Bench in Ontario, Canada.
Correct.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Conrad. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so pleased. Now, you were born in Winnipeg.
I was.
And you grew up in Sarnia.
I grew up in Sarnia.
But you chose the Niagara Peninsula rather than Lake Erie North Shore.
Correct.
Why was that?
Well, I really started 10 or 12 years ago in this business, and the Lake Erie North Shore was not developed that much. And we really started this business while we still had real jobs in Toronto, commuting back and forth, hours on the QEW. So driving back and forth from Toronto, where we lived, to Niagara to develop our winery was just a lot easier for us to get back and forth.
You had real jobs at the time, so what you're doing now is not a real job? Tell me about, you were in broadcasting.
Correct.
What exactly did you do?
I worked for the CTV News Network. I worked for the CTV National News primarily, in charge of all the editors and editing and satellite feeds and logistics to get all those news stories ready. So when Lloyd Robertson got on the air and said, roll that story was there and ready to go. Perfect,
perfect. Now tell me about your path from broadcasting to winemaking in Niagara.
Well, it started as an amateur winemaker for a long time, making wine at home in 5-gallon pails in my basement, and at one point in time discovered that a few Niagara wineries, at that time Lakeview Estates Winery, supplied fresh juice to the home winemaking market. So I purchased fresh juice one year, and from there the journey really started when I realized the quality was there, the quantity was there, and we could make some really, really good wine. Even a home winemaker could do that. And so for a few years I kept as a home winemaker, but making it from fresh juice. And at some point decided that it would be best if we got in the business full-time. So we started by, my wife and I started by buying properties. We bought one little farm, planted a 10-acre vineyard. Then a couple years later discovered a second site, or the Vinemount Ridge, where the winery is located, where we planted more acreage. So between the two farms we have 32 acres. We have 2 different sub-appellations. And we find that it gives a nice diversity and a nice balance to the wines that we could make. And just a few years ago, we finally moved to Niagara, left the Toronto jobs, and now do our winery business full-time.
But you come from amateur winemaking, yet you've hired a professional winemaker. You're not one of those guys who, I'm going to do it on my own no matter how good or bad it is.
Yeah, and we have Arthur Harder's our winemaker, and Arthur has all the experience and credentials. He's a great winemaker. And it's a little different if you're making a 5-gallon pail in your basement and making a 5,000-gallon pail. A level of understanding of winemaking can only be really done probably by a trained professional. Winemakers who are an enologist have a degree in enology, which is really a degree in wine chemistry. And wine chemistry allows you to understand things on a different level than an amateur ever could. And so we've recognized very quickly that we needed a professional to handle the quantities and to handle the quality, and as we progress along, our quality has gone up and we're very happy with the results we get.
I wish more Ontario winemakers would think, or winery owners would think the way you do, and actually hire professional winemakers instead of making them on their own. So you have 2 vineyards now. One is on Bartlett Creek, which is in the Lincoln Lakeshore appellation.
That's correct.
That was your first one. Well, the other one is the Vinemount Ridge appellation in Balls Falls. Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea how much people like to say Balls Falls?
They like to say Balls Falls. It's a conservation area next door to the winery that was owned by the Ball family. Many years ago they donated it to the Conservation Authority, who's developed some nice property there. So it's a little like a little heritage village there. And so people remember Balls Falls, but we're beside Balls Falls, and that's where you'll find Calamus Estate Winery. Right,
absolutely. You can just Google map and write in Balls Falls, and there you are. Tell me, what are the different characteristics of each of your vineyards, the 2 vineyards?
Well, I find that the Lincoln Lakeshore sub-appellation, a little bit closer to the lake, stretches the season out a little bit longer. We grow more reds down there closer to the lake. That moderating effect of the lake is more pronounced down that way. So we have Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc and Merlot down closer to the lake, as well as Riesling and Chardonnay. Up at the winery, we just have one red variety there, Cabernet Franc, which is an early ripening red grape, therefore can stand that particular site, but we have more Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, and Gewürztraminer there. So we find the two different properties give us a balance, give us the different appellations, do things slightly differently. Sometimes we bottle varietals strictly from one appellation, like our Pinot Gris or our Riesling come just from Vinemount Ridge. Or sometimes we blend them together, and so the blending of them together gives a new nuance, a new layer, and these are the kind of things that a professional winemaker understands, and we can mix them and try to find the best combination of the two to make the best quality wine we can.
Yeah, talk to me about this one. You said the Pinot Gris comes from Vinemount Ridge, and yet it's labeled as Niagara Peninsula. That's a choice because it's a better known appellation?
Yes, I think so. I mean, people understand Niagara. I think people are just starting to learn the appellation system now, and I don't know if people understand the distinction between the two of them. We really want people to focus on Niagara, focus on Ontario, and from that you're going to know that Ontario makes world-class wines, and once you get to understand the region, you can understand the nuances of the little sub-appellations.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I even understand the nuances of the sub-appellations yet. I mean, it takes a while. They were politically chosen rather than sort of evolved.
That's correct, and it does give some general kind of characteristics to it. Unfortunately, you can have the influence of a vineyard can be quite different. Adjacent vineyards can be quite different. The style of grapes, how you prune them in the vineyard, how you manage the vineyard, how you make the wine, the type of yeast you use, the temperature you ferment. There's a lot of factors that come in to finally making a wine. So there's not that distinctive a boundary when it comes to wines, when a wine from one sub-appellation is going to taste dramatically different than a wine from another sub-appellation. But it does give some general guidelines and some general boundaries, and but we all want everybody to understand it's a Niagara wine and it's 100% Ontario.
Right, and it's 100% Pinot Gris. Tell me about this one. What did you do different with this one?
This one was just, again, one thing that we really like to celebrate in Niagara is the fact that Mother Nature gives us a different palette to work with every year. And what we had this year...
There's a hint of pink on it.
Just a nice dark color. And the Pinot Gris grape itself is quite dark in color. And last summer, this is the 2012 vintage, and last summer was very hot and dry. The grapes almost get sunburned when they're that hot, and so the skins get quite dark, and those skins will add some color to the wine.
And flavor.
And so we added, it has a beautiful mouthfeel to the wine and a nice long finish to the wine. So 2012 is going to go down as another good year we've had here in Niagara. Every year is a little bit different, but we're finding the 2012 wines, we're just starting to come out with them now, are beautiful, rounded, full flavored wines. In a year or 2 years from now, when the red wines start coming out, people will start to see that in the red wines. But now you're able to experience some 2012 whites, which are really quite nice. Yeah,
this is one of the first of the 2012s I'm tasting, and it's absolutely brilliant. I think it's going to be available at the liquor board pretty soon at $17.20.
$17. Actually, it's an LCBO pricing, so it'll be $17.95.
$17.95.
Yeah, so we'll have to change our price to adjust that, and it will be available at the LCBO as well as at the winery, online, mail order, and any other way we can get it to you.
So when is it coming out at the liquor board?
I believe it's the middle of May.
Middle of May. So if you order it prior to the liquor board's release, can you still get it at $17.20?
Technically, yes. We've always sold this wine for $17.20 at the winery. LCBO likes their things to end in 95.
Yes.
And so $17.95 will be their price. So yes, you can order from the winery at any time, and we'd be glad to ship it, or you can go to the winery and pick it up.
Okay. Now, you're the only winery in Niagara with its own intergalactic observatory. What's with that?
Well, we have an observatory at the winery with a 16-inch Cassegrain telescope on board. This is actually a friend of mine who together we developed this project. It is something that's kind of an added attraction so people can come down to the winery. We do have telescope nights at the winery. We also have a room at the winery which we rent out for events and functions. And if it's a clear night and it looks really nice out, we'll open up the telescope and we'll see what's out there. So we have tastings, we call them tastings with the stars, and they're kind of fun. People can have a glass of wine, can look through the telescope, and depending on the phase of the moon or if a planet's going by or whatever, we can just look through there and get some interesting celestial observations.
Can you see our man Chris Hatfield up there?
No, we wave at him on the way by because you can see the International Space Station when it goes by, but it moves too quick to pick off with the telescope. But we just wave, that's all we do.
Right, that's hilarious. So how has being a wine producer changed your life?
Well, I guess it's like any business, it becomes your life. You know, back when I worked in broadcasting, you had a shift and you went to work and you did the best job you could do, and then you got to go home at the end of the day and relax and have a glass of wine. Now in the wine business, it's very all-encompassing. So, and I think that's the same as any entrepreneurial business. You have to get completely and totally involved to do it. We've worked very hard to get a good product out to people through the different distribution channels that we can in the province of Ontario. So that in itself is a full-time job of managing a business, managing a winery, and trying to get our product to the people of Ontario.
Yeah, yeah. It's not more than a full-time job. So what's your next big challenge?
Our next big challenge is just growing our business, which we always try to do. We've planted some more vineyards. Pinot Gris has been one of our best-selling wines. It's our most award-winning wine. The 2012 wine has already won a medal before it even got released, and so a silver medal at the Finger Lakes International Wine Competition. And so we planted more Pinot Gris at the winery and an adjacent property with another Niagara grape grower. So we are going to ramp up the production of Pinot Gris because we know how much people like it, and it just turns out to be a lovely wine.
I certainly liked it. I tasted it at Cuvée. Side by side with your 11, and it stood out as one of the best wines I tasted. Now you have another brand called Calvin.
Calvin, yes.
Calamus plus vin.
Cal for Calamus and vin for wine, yes.
Right.
And so it's also our logo. If you can see the logo here, we had a name the logo contest. So we decided that we should have a little fun with that. And so we put it out to all the people who were on our email list and said, send in your suggestions to name the logo. We had lots of people reply to it, even my mother. But my mother didn't win, and and only one person came up with the name Calvin, which was a nice combination. So they won a nice prize, and we've gone with that. So we named one of our wines Calvin's Cabernet, and we like to have a little bit of fun at the winery, so we thought that'd be kind of fun to do that.
Well, anytime I think of the name Calvin, I think of Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah. And so Calvin's kind of a dreamer living in a dream world. Well, so are you a bit of a Calvin?
Well, I think you have to be a bit of a dreamer to be in this business. It's a tough business, and so you have to be able to have a vision. We have to work very hard on that vision in order to make it work in this crazy province we have here.
That's fantastic. Thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate your doing this.
Thanks, Conrad. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. My guest has been Derek Saunders from Calamus Winery. Stay tuned. We'll have more interesting guests soon. Bye-bye.